Hey Kings, it's your boy, Cheems of Regret. Hope you're having a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, cause I'm certainly not. Regardless, you're not here to hear me whine about my life, you're here to hear my evaluation of Halo Infinite after it's been out for a year. Now, some of you may remember and be quick to disregard my opinions about the game due to how I was downright shilling for it around this time last year, and this is fair. I was overly optimistic about the game's future. My optimism was based on the assumption that 343 would deliver regular content drops the same way they did their previous games. At least that way, I believe the issues could be patched up quickly. Boy, was I wrong, so I rightfully deserve my L on that front. Now that we've all seen what the game amounts to, I am sure many if not all of you are expecting me to retract my positive statements about the game. After all, that's the only logical move, right? I still stand by a lot of what I said leading up to and shortly following the game's launch. If we look closely at the core gameplay loop of Halo Infinite, it's really good. The sandbox has a really good foundation and the game feels like a logical middle ground in between the classic Bungie games and the modern 343 games. To borrow the words of our Lord and Savior Todd, it just works. Ask any random Halo player out in the wild and they're likely to agree with me. The core gameplay systems of Halo Infinite are good, and I would even go the extra mile and argue that they're one of, if not the best in the series. No, Bungie cards, I don't care how nostalgic you are for the old days. Majority of your complaints with modern Halo games is that it doesn't play exactly to the letter like Halo 3, and that the BR isn't the be-all end-all of the sandbox. It's fucking retarded. Exploiting glitchy map geometry and physics and buggy button combos has the potential to be fun, but more often than not, they're just frustrating. How can you expect the franchise to grow and flourish in the future if you're not willing to let it innovate? I mean, sure, Halo 4 and 5 made changes that were too drastic to the core gameplay, but Infinite brought it back in line. It iterated where it needed to and rolled back changes where it should, creating the best mechanical successor to the classic trilogy we've seen so far. If your mind can't even process that, then I recommend checking in at an institution. I'm sure they'd enjoy your company there. Now, after hearing me thoroughly suck off 343 and swallow their load whole, I'm sure you've come to the conclusion that I have nothing but praises for the game, right?
Wrong!
While the core gameplay systems of Infinite are indeed like a well-carved, beautiful gem, taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture reveals that it's a gem covered in a whole load of horseshit currently on fire and is being stomped by a pack of angry gorillas who are also on fire. Practically every single gripe I have with the game lies with stuff that isn't a part of the core gameplay experience. Between glitchy UI, bad monetization and progression, network issues galore, chronic lack of content, and perhaps worst of all, the long stretches of radio silence from the devs, there's just no shortage of things to frustrate you. Where do I even begin? Logging into the main menu, there's a significant chance you're greeted with blank boards where there were supposed to be news and images. Sometimes Spartans don't even load up properly in the multiplayer menu. Customization options could take up a whole ass minute to load. Matchmaking cancels if you tab away from the multiplayer menu before the lower bar confirms that you're searching. You can't even customize your own character while matchmaking. The newly added Forge and Custom Games menu are finicky to navigate, and you can't load into a free-for-all match with a friend. There's also this one other issue, but I can't confirm this for the life of me, but I swear, using an XP booster somehow increased matchmaking times. Like, I swear I'm not crazy. Playlists that normally took less than a minute to matchmake suddenly took way more than that whenever I had an XP booster on. With the state of the game as it were, I honestly couldn't tell if this was an honest-to-god glitch in the system or some nefarious plot by 343 to sell Battle Pass level-ups. There's probably a whole load more I'm missing, but I'm sure you get the picture by this point. The UI and the main menu and all that other stuff, oh geez, they just need a whole lot of tweaking. And all things considered, these are relatively minor issues. Monetization, and honestly, what hasn't been said about monetization and all its flaws? Like, I'll be honest here, I would be willing to look over some of the egregious monetization systems because, well, they're all purely cosmetic. But just because they don't affect gameplay doesn't mean they're not bad. The prices for some stuff available are fucking egregious. And it ruins what is otherwise an alright, if not pretty good, customization system. The decision to sell entire skin for the entire armor set instead of just colors that you can swap each armor piece for, kind of like Warframe. Oh man, it's just a bad decision. Honestly, mind-bogglingly bad. I hope that the person behind the system changes and grows as a person moving forward. Credit where credit is due though. If you paid for the battle pass, it never expires, so you won't have to force yourself to complete it within a certain time frame just because you put money into it. That being said, a significant portion of the battle passes so far have been consumables like double XP or challenge swap tokens, and another significant portion are duplicate emblems, leaving a much less impressive section for all the shit that people really want, like weapon skins, armor pieces, and coatings. To top it all off, Infinite has one of, if not the most retarded XP gain systems I've seen in gaming. The main way you'll level up your battle pass is through weekly challenges, and this is simply horrid. I've said this since the beta last summer, and I'll say it again, this is just stupid. This essentially forces you to choose between having fun or progressing through the challenges. Again, it's just really dumb. Network issues are arguably the worst of the bunch. Desync is the name of the game here, and it ruins what is otherwise a great gameplay experience. Between melee hits not registering, grenades disappearing after you throw them, enemies hitting you around corners because you haven't gotten behind cover on there, and the list goes on. I can't list all of them. This is arguably the worst and most frustrating flaw in Halo Infinite. Glitchy menus and egregious microtransactions could easily be overlooked if the game's servers didn't shit itself every other match. A fun game goes a long way in distracting people from insulting monetization systems. If you don't believe me, feel free to look at every single Call of Duty game since 2015. See if you can say I'm wrong. Next up, the lack of content is also a major driver in player frustration. One whole year and 343 has only added 5 new maps divided into 3 content updates? Interspersed between these major updates are the additions of limited time game modes or events. While they rotate in and out every few weeks, the fact that they're recycling game modes just highlights how little shit there is to play. This is unacceptable for a live service game. If the intent is to keep players coming back again and again, there needs to be a steady stream of content on rotation to keep people hooked. After 6 months, players are bound to be burnt out on playing the same maps and the same game modes over and over again, doubly so with all the network issues. Now, if Season 1 was the only 6-month season, I, and no doubt many others, would have been more forgiving of the shoddy state the game launched in. As it stands though, they had to extend it to 2 seasons, and we all know how big of a disaster that has been. All of the previously mentioned are major reasons why Halo players are rightfully frustrated at Infinite and its state. But maybe, just maybe, if 343 weren't so goddamn tight-lipped and spoke to their community more often, maybe players would at least be a little more understanding. 343's long stretches of radio silence compounds the previous issues mentioned because players are left to speculate on when their problems will get addressed. With no clue when things will get better, if it will ever get better, it's hard to stay positive, let alone invested in the game. Now I've been thorough and I have ripped the game a whole new one, and after hearing all of that, one might come to the conclusion that 343 are indeed the worst game devs ever, who are literally picked out by Satan to specifically ruin the Halo franchise and cause suffering among its fans. After all, Monotone Dildo Man says so. Therefore, it must be true, right? Yeah, no. You're smoking crack if you think so. Infinite was on a downward spiral for the whole year, but with the winter update, 343 have managed to pull it out of the tailspin. Network issues and desync have decreased significantly, by a noticeable amount, in fact. Even when I connect to lobbies on the other side of the globe, I'm facing much less rubber banding than I did before the update. This is especially impressive because I'm using third world country internet here in Indonesia. On the monetization and customization front, all previously released armor cores are made free for all players. All future armor cores and cadet colors will also be free. and visors are now usable with all armor cores. The store is still pretty shit though, so that's unfortunate. On the battle pass and progression front, a very basic performance-based experience system has been implemented. Now, it's not very good, but it's much better than the awful stopgap system the game had previously. Now you're rewarded for performing well. Admittedly, it's kind of a pitiful reward system, but it's still a reliable way to earn XP outside of challenges. Menus seem to load faster now, and I've yet to have matchmaking times increase when I activate an XP booster, so that's definitely a one-up from the previous versions of the game. On the content front, things are starting to look up. Starting with Season 3, 343 has promised to do away with 6-month season. This would mean a content drop every few months as opposed to every half a year. That's already an infinitely better rate than the depressing amount of stuff they've delivered this year, but there is potential for more. With the addition of Forge and the custom games browser, 343 sort of solved the lack of content issue. Now, last year, when I published my hit piece on Battlefield 2042, I lambasted DICE for providing portal mode to the players, which, in my opinion, was essentially them telling the players to make their own game if they don't like the shit design choices that DICE made. Now, I could easily be a hypocrite and conveniently ignore that I ever said this, but I'm gonna keep that same energy and acknowledge that I did. The addition of Forge and 343's intention to roll in Forge maps in regular matchmaking is, in my opinion, the devs passing on a huge chunk of responsibility to the players to make the game. It's basically them admitting that they can't pump out maps and game modes at a rate that's satisfying to the community. While I'd prefer the devs fix their own mess, I still begrudgingly admit 343's intentions to introduce player-made maps and modes into matchmaking playlists does solve the barren content issue. However, quality control will still be an issue though. Player-made maps just don't go through the same amount of rigorous testing that full-time 343 employees do, so I don't expect the content drop to be lifted anytime soon by Forge mode. So, with all that being said, all in all, how was the first year of Halo Infinite? Well, total hogwash is the nicest thing I can call it. While I appreciate the fixes and content additions that came with the 2022 winter update, I can't help but feel like this is what the game should have launched with in the first place. The fantastic core systems of the game are genuinely enjoyable to play. There's something refreshing about a shooter that's just purely arena action. No hero shooter bullshit, no meta loadout setup, no comically unbalanced weapons to grind for to dominate game modes, just hop in, gun down the bad guys, and hop out. It's a real damn shame that everything else surrounding the core gameplay is just utter shit. Now, 343 has managed to stop the uncontrollable tailspin with the winter update, but they still have to level the plane and regain altitude. I'm cautiously optimistic for the future since it does seem like Infinite is finally turning around. But if 343 can't pull out from the dive, I wouldn't be surprised. Anyways, that's all I have for this video. I have some more free time for a while, so I have some videos in the pipeline for late December or early January. Like, comment, and subscribe if you feel like it. This has been Cheems of Regret, wishing you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Good luck and Godspeed to y'all. Signing out.